Right. So just make yourself comfortable in your chair. Take a little bit of time for this. Sometimes I go through it quite quickly, but it's a process that I think is very much the sort of foundation in lots of ways for everything that we do in Tai Chi. So just give yourself a little bit more time. Try and sit in a comfortable position where you don't have to keep kind of fidgeting around. Ideally, from a Tai Chi point of view, a bit forwards in your chair with some of your weight in your feet. Although that in itself isn't strictly necessary for the moment, because to start off with, just taking your attention through a very simple body scan. The body scan is a common sort of method found in a lot of meditative techniques, and it is literally a scan. So you're not trying to change anything. Although I think inevitably Tai Chi or something similar is in your background, you will find yourself changing things. It doesn't matter if you do or you don't. But starting with your feet, your toes, and gradually just working your way up to the ankles on both sides, calves, your knees. Your knees and the big muscles and bones of your thighs going up into your hips and pelvis. Scanning up through your back, lower, middle, and upper part of your back, towards your shoulders. And aware perhaps of the spine itself in the middle of your back. And the same thing in the front of your body, your belly, the solar plexus, chest and ribs. Again, reaching your shoulders. Your arms resting on your legs. So just aware of the weight of your arms pressing gently into your legs, your hands and your fingers. Finding your head just resting on your shoulders. Your face, notice any tension or stiffness in your face. You just have a very broad outline picture of your body. Perhaps a sort of there's a quieter quality in your mind as you continually refocus your attention into your body. And it's that process of refocusing that we want to try and just notice as we go through the session. So moving now to the tapping exercise, just rubbing your hands together, noticing the warmth that gets generated, and then tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder, your arm. On the other side. Upper part of your chest. And down to your belly. And your legs. So then sit back. So two ways that we can use that ability to focus and refocus our attention. One is to bring us back to whichever posture we're in, and from that sense of, stillness and quietness and spaciousness that is characteristic of Tai Chi. And the other is a little bit more analytical, because you can also notice, say, as you sit here, you can't quite get your hips to drop, maybe, or the shoulders are a bit tight. And is there something you can do about it? So that's a little bit more active, I suppose. You could say that from that point of, let's call it, for want of a better term, stillness, we're able to not just observe, but in the process of observing, bring about the possibility of a change. So this obviously goes beyond the actual body scan itself, but is very much resting on that kind of quality of focus, that quality of stillness that the body scan can actually help us with. So our awareness becomes more and more subtle, noticing patterns of movement in, say, our breathing, where the restrictions on that might be, where the pathways around those restrictions might be. Remember, we look for the path of least resistance. Almost like we develop a kind of map of the body. So coming back to the upright position, so we have one aspect of the entire practice, which is this idea of a return to that simple awareness that we first sort of identified, as it were, through the body scan. The movement now becomes another point of focus, but also another point of change. So beginning to turn your head. Your shoulders. So we have a familiar routine, as always. That can be helpful and unhelpful. Helpful in the sense that we can go beyond just a sense of what do I do next. So we can go more deeply, take our awareness more deeply into the movement going forwards. Unhelpful in the sense that it's kind of every day, isn't it? We do this every week, a couple of times, 3 times a week, whatever. So you can sit here, circling your elbows around and wondering about that, what you're going to do about that wall that needs painting, or whatever it actually is. Hands coming down to your sides. Just remind yourself, you want somebody weight a third of your weight, if possible, in your feet. How does that feel in the shoulders, your back, front of your body? and then winding around. And back the other way. Resting your hands, tilting forwards, feeling the transfer of your weight. Weight transfer is an important element to try and bring the focus of your attention back to, as is that sense of the feet, hips, buttocks sinking downwards. They're both valuable elements in the movements and both things that are important to us in our daily life. So the more we can begin to recognize them and become familiar with them, the more likely we are to retain them and to be able to have them in our daily lives. Turning towards one knee. Remember, the turn is in the center of your body. Once again, that too becomes a key point of attention, the anchor for our attention. And then going forwards and turning the opposite direction and back. So rolling your pelvis around. Okay. Letting your head go around in a small circle. Feeling the movement in your spine. Go back the opposite way. Coming back to the center and then taking a step. Once again, paying a bit of attention to this. We don't often do this, do we? You know, we walk somewhere and we go to the shops or we walk around the house, but to actually just bring your attention to your step. And again, this is a good way to focus our attention, but also we can use that focused attention, just notice the step. And through that, work out, is this a good way to step? Are there things that I can do to improve the stepping? So for instance, we try that with the other foot. Notice how I'm using my foot. I pull my toes back, put the heel down, lower the toes. This heel-toe action is important to us. It's something that is easily lost as we get older and often lost. Can be a cause of falling. The good news is that it's easy to get back because it's a very simple exercise. If you train it, then your body will respond by getting better at it. When we walk down the road, we don't want to be sort of walking down the road, maybe talking to somebody or looking at the shops or whatever we do. We don't want to keep thinking, oh, I'm going to put my heel toe down. You want it to be a natural action. But it is easily lost. And so what we learn to do is to practice those things and in such a way that they once again become quite natural to us. So let your hands drop down, turn your hands palm forwards. And bird folds its wings. So a challenging thing to retain a sense of clarity and awareness of what you're doing. And what you're doing is actually so familiar. The other challenge, of course, and this is very, very common in my experience, is that as we're starting to quieten down, as we're starting to relax, you start to feel a bit kind of droopy and tired. Oh, it's got that kind of thing to it. It's a very normal thing to have happen. We often don't realize how tired we are, but then, as soon as you give yourself permission to relax, it's almost like your body takes over and says, thank goodness for that, I can have a proper rest now. Sort of thing. So don't be surprised or if that happens or feel that it's some kind of massive failure. And then after the next one going forwards, change into fisherman castanet. Because we're familiar with the movements, we can start to just be aware of details. Can you feel the brush of the air against your fingertips? Are your fingers separate? Can you feel the air between your fingers? Are you aware of the sort of trajectory, shape that your fingers trace? Dropping down and the natural swing up there. We're not trying to lift our hands. And this is important because often what we do is we do this. This exercise doesn't require that. It's quite natural here for your arm to drop. And actually, if I said to you, do this exercise and stop your fingers from swinging upwards, you'll be sort of like stretching out here. It will require quite a lot of effort. So then just notice what is happening in your body, your sides, your back, your front. Where do you feel the patterns within the broader movement? Patterns of expansion, contraction, of opening and closing that are connected with this movement. And then rolling the ball in towards you. This time as you come back, change into pigeon spread its wings, turn your hands in, drawing your elbows apart, feeling the opening, expansion in the front of your body, which then contracts, drawing your arms in. The opening across your back. Let the muscles of your chest and your back in particular carry the lion's share of the effort, moving your arms in and down. And this time, drawing your hands straight back, pushing wave. So one of the things we can take advantage of with the exercises that we're more familiar with is that there is less need to be thinking, oh, what have I got to do with this hand? What have I got to do with that? You know the pattern, it's a simple pattern anyway. So again, we have some kind of space, as it were, to find that sense of being in equilibrium, being centered, sinking down, however you think about it. Maybe here, as you settle into your hips, possibly even here, as you settle into your feet. And then a loose fist. One more time going forwards. At the end of the movement, unwrap your fingers, turn them out, winding out and back in. You still have that sense of your weight moving, where it's moving to. Now, coming back, turning your hands palm down, polishing the table, turning in the center of your body. Feeling that moving your arms across. One more round, one more to each side. Coming back to the center, turning your hands palm up. A gentle push down through feet and hips. Get just a sense of an expanding energy rising up through the body and then letting it drain away. This time, as you reach the end of the movement, the hands low down, rotate out, going into the wild goose. So when we get to the wild goose, we have this very strong image. It's worth reflecting on how we're using these images. We don't use them in quite the same way as they might be used in something like hypnotherapy. It's not a criticism of hypnotherapy, but by the way, and there is a relationship there. There is a similarity. But in some forms of therapy, you might use the visualization as a sort of guided journey away from and out from where you are to realize further possibilities. And obviously that's going to be part of what we do. We have to sort of reach out with the image of the bird in flight, perhaps, or whatever. But there's no intention to stay there. The whole point is to sort of reach out and pull it in. To find those qualities that we identify in our body, using to cultivate those qualities, not just to find them. So if the image of the bird in flight has a sort of fluidity to it, a grace to it, it's one of the things that we're looking for in the movement. The image of the goose in flight takes you back to, in my case, a memory of kind of bird watching on the Norfolk coast. That is not so terribly helpful from a Tai Chi point of view. A brief flash of it might give me a sense of openness, of spaciousness, but no more than that. And then easing forwards. Heart in the clouds. So as I say, I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't ever let our attention go with these things. It can be a very valuable practice in some circumstances, but it's not quite how we're using the images in Tai Chi. One more time. And then dragon plucks the stars from the sky. So here, for instance, we might want to refer back to, probably chances are you've seen plenty of images of the type of creature that the dragon is. That slender, serpent-like quality. And there are many interesting things about that for us, I think. And certainly this could be a starting point for that sort of investigation, maybe reading about it, finding out about the culture. All of that is useful. But that comes later. It's not while we're doing the practice. And one of the outcomes of this process of continually bringing your attention back, and that process is illustrated perhaps by this exercise, because we extend out and our awareness goes out, possibly to the image of the dragon or whatever we associate with it, then immediately it comes back in. It doesn't stay out there. And at the bottom, there's just that sense of the body, come the same as with the body scan, that sense of spaciousness and stillness that we associate with this posture in Tai Chi, with central equilibrium. Before we move out, it's with practice, bringing our attention back to that state, to those qualities of central equilibrium, is really only takes a moment. One more time. Change. One more round. One foot out. Scooping the sea and looking at the sky. Good, and then grasping the tiger's ears. Change sides. And grasping the tiger's ears. Feet back in. Sink your weight into your right hip. Hold the ball with the right hand on top. Move forwards towards your left leg. So you're going on diagonally. You turn, feeding out the left hand, pressing down with the right hand. The part the wild horse's mane. Coming back, taking time at each junction, at each point of change, just to settle a little bit. Move across into your left hip. Turn your body, holding the ball. Move forwards. Feel that sense of extra weight in your right leg. And then coming back into your left hip. Across into your right hip. Forwards into your left leg again. And as you do that, also aware that the upper part of your body, there's this expansive quality followed by the contraction. Holding the ball as you move across, and once again expanding and contracting. There's a lot going on that we want to try and just allow to rest in the sort of circle of our attention. And as does that, we may notice, oh, hold on, weight isn't going in the correct place. You may notice you're missing the detail, you're missing, maybe you're not turning or whatever. So again, once we've got these things in our point of focus, in our area of focus, I should say, then we can start to work with them a little. Do one more on each side. And let your hands rest. Rubbing your hands together. And tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. And your arm. The other side. Upper part of your chest. And belly. And your legs. Pushing your heels up. And circling around. And then back the other way. Standing. So once again, we can go through the kind of body scan, finding a comfortable position to stand in, not initially necessarily the Tai Chi posture. So the first stage of this, and really the first stage of developing the posture, is to develop the awareness. What you're not aware of is difficult to change. So you just run through really quite quickly, so feet, legs, knees, hips, the back and front of your body, your shoulders, your arms, your head and your face. Then when you bring your attention back to your feet, your weight going forwards a little bit, and hips just settling back. So now we can start to arrange things. We can start to engage rather than just observe. We can change the alignment of our body. We can drop the center of gravity, and so on and so forth, bringing our experience of the Tai Chi postures, and in particular this posture with its quality of central equilibrium, however we sort of relate to that. Sinking down just a little bit, bringing your hands around as though you're cradling the ball, pushing up. Turning your hands over, sink down, and just for a moment at the bottom of the movement, can we return our attention to central equilibrium? And then pushing up again. And again, at the bottom of the movement, and we again just cultivate that quality, however we experience it. And then changing. And change. Good. Okay. Give your legs a little shake. Central equilibrium, Zhongding, for me, encapsulates all of these qualities of stillness, spaciousness, of a focus of attention, of the physical posture, the rooting down, and so on and so forth. So one of the challenges I think in Tai Chi is, how do I maintain central equilibrium when I'm doing this sort of thing? The challenge is quite useful. Try not to have the expectation that you're always going to have central equilibrium, because it's a fleeting experience. Just as it is, this is where it becomes very practical, I think, because when we go out and we walk to the shops or whatever we're doing, you're not going to be in central equilibrium all the time. Pavements will slope and tilt you over. Cars will beep and shock you, and queues in supermarkets will annoy you, and so on and so forth. It's all just very much part of life. But this is where, again, we learn to come back before those things take us too far away. So 1 foot forwards, check your stance, and transfer in the weight. So hopefully you're starting to get a sense of how this returning process really is not a lengthy process when we practiced it. That in practical terms, you don't want to walk along the road going, yeah, I'm still there. Yeah, I mean, you never get anything done, would you? Or if you're vacuuming the room, or whatever you're having to deal with. We just want that slight sense of, oh yeah, I remember that, a touch. And if we practice this, then there's a familiarity there. And I'm not suggesting that we walk along the road to the shops, or we do, we're meditating, but that we just keep a sort of connection to it. I sometimes think of these things as being like the sort of mooring post of a boat in the sea. You might spend a long time establishing the mooring posts, putting it in, banging it into the seabed, whatever they do, I'm not sure really. building the pier, whatever. But then, it becomes a kind of practical tool. You tie up the boat, you go and do whatever you're doing. The boat drifts away from the mooring post, but if you put the time into building it properly initially, then it will pull back. It's not going to stay there. It will drift away again and pull back. And then raising your toes and your heel. So it becomes habitual, this sense of just returning, just to touch that quality briefly. And remember, we're talking about quality that embraces mind, body, and energy. So it goes from the physical stability, shall we say, the rooting down, right through to the sense of perhaps a less frantic quality of energy, especially if you're in a hurry and maybe you can't find your keys and you've got to get somewhere. It can be really, but again, you can get that sense of just settle in and maybe even work out where your keys are. And with that comes a sort of releasing in your attention, that touching of that still quality. Bring your foot in. There's three things, the three treasures of Tai Chi, the three jewels, are interdependent. I think of them as being the three legs of the tripod. And then on the other side, raising your toes and your heel. Stepping in. Step through. Changing direction. Okay. Have your right foot forwards. Fisherman cast a net. Recognizing again that gentle curve in your fingertips. And once again, recognizing what's associated with that, what sensations of movement, of expansion and contraction are associated with that in your back, your sides, the front of your body, your shoulders. This time as you go forwards and you feel your arms swinging up, turn. So the movement becomes wind blows the willows. Good. And then change over. So fisherman cast the net. Wind blows the willows. And then bring one foot in, whichever way you're going to move. Step through. Bring the empty foot in, check your posture. And then, if it's appropriate, the full version would be the foot coming up. But check your posture first. Bring the foot in. Do you have central equilibrium, the root, the alignment, and so on? We need to know that before we go to lift our leg. And then going back. And bringing your feet down. Okay. Go back to your chairs. We're getting into the habit of taking a moment, not just when you're doing Tai Chi, but to think about it, when you sit down to eat or to watch the television or have a cup of tea or something like that, just are you in a good posture? It's very easy to find yourself sort of slouching over. Oh, you go to get up and realise that you've kind of like twisted up your back or something like that. Your hands drop down. With the weight of your arms hanging from your shoulders, and then embrace tiger, return to the mountain. One more time. And rest. Okay, and then just open your eyes. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody.